1 minute. I'll now call to order the October 1st, 2024 meeting of the Goochland County Board of Supervisors. To begin, we will hear our invocation by Pastor Dave Nelson of Smyrna Baptist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Chairman Tom Winfrey. Please stand as you are able.
Our Father God, we come today and we realize with the things going on around the country and the bad weather down south that our times really are in your hands. We don't have the power that we often think we do, but we're glad to defer that to you. And our prayer would be that today you would grant us the humility to walk before you in truth. We pray that you will give us a sense of your presence. And we really pray that for those who are suffering so much down south, especially in North Carolina right now. But there are many places where people have lost homes, lost everything. And here we are gathered together as a board, supervisors, supervising things that are still here. And for that, we give you thanks. And we thank you for these leaders who want to call on you in prayer, who know that they don't have all the answers right off the tops of their heads, but that we come to you seeking your wisdom and your understanding. And we pray that you will bless in the course of this meeting today those who are bringing issues before the board, and the board as they hear them, show them what they should do. And we look forward to what you're going to do in the days ahead. And we pray this really in the only name, our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Nelson. We will now move to the presentation, proclamation recognizing October 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Ms. Biskiewicz will read the proclamation while Ms. Andrea Honan and Heather Salmon of Goochland Cares come to the podium.
Whereas domestic violence is a pattern of abusive and coercive behaviors used by one individual intended to exert power and control over another individual in the context of an intimate or family relationship. And whereas abusive behaviors may include but are not limited to physical assaults, verbal assaults, threats, intimidation, emotional abuse, use of weapons, destruction of property, violence towards other people or pets, sexual violence, and control over economic resources. And whereas domestic violence is an intolerable violent crime with public health implications for every person in Goochland County, whether a victim, survivor, a family member, significant other, neighbor, employer, or coworker of a victim survivor. And whereas no one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate domestic violence on their own, we must work together to educate our entire population about what can be done to prevent such violence, support victims, survivors, and their families, and increase support for agencies providing services to those community members. And whereas Goochland Cares, a comprehensive domestic violence program, provided 74 survivors of domestic violence in 2023 by providing 24-hour hotline services, facilitating safety plans, providing shelter services, offering support and information, providing case management and counseling, advocating for victims, survivors seeking protective orders, empowering survivors to chart their own course for healing, and facilitating educational trainings and prevention programs. And whereas ending domestic violence in Goochland County involves active collaboration among Goochland Cares, Goochland Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, Goochland County Sheriff's Office, Goochland Victim Witness Program, the 16th District Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court Services Unit, Goochland Department of Social Services, and other regional partners. Now therefore, we, the Goochland County Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Goochland County.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very much. Oh, sorry. Could we, do I need to call it? Or-
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the proclamation as presented.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Vote passes.
Thank
you.
Just thank everyone. We couldn't do this without the community and our partners. Unfortunately, this program is needed, and I'm sorry. So this program is needed, unfortunately, so we're glad to have it and have the community partner with us and support us, so thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you for everything you do.
We are truly blessed to have organizations like Goochland Cares serving our community every day. We will move on to the chair's comments. First, I want to highlight that the Goochland County Board of Supervisors and School Board have scheduled joint town hall meetings in October as follows. The first will be District 5 on Thursday, October 3rd, 6 p.m. at Dover Baptist Church. The second will be for Districts 2 and 3 on Monday, October 7th at 6 p.m. In this building, in this boardroom. The third will be for District 1 on Tuesday, October 22nd at 6 p.m. At Byrd Elementary. And the final one will be for District 4 on Monday, October 28th at 6 p.m. at Salem Baptist Church. I also want to note that early voting has already taken place at the Goochland Sports Complex immediately out these back doors here. Also I note that we have the same voting precincts, but also a new one at Avery Point in District 4 for starting with this election. And let me see. Then we, as a Board of Supervisors, we want to send our thoughts and prayers to communities in Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and all those impacted by Hurricane Helene this past week. I was uplifted to hear from Chief Eddie Ferguson earlier today that Goochland County Fire and Rescue has 5 professionals on the ground helping to assist in rescue and humanitarian efforts. We take public safety seriously in Goochland, and we'll do all we can to protect our Goochlanders, but all our friends and neighbors in need. Also, I want to note that Sheriff Stephen Creasy was recently elected Secretary of the Virginia Sheriff's Association. which is a great honor. And so he is now third in leadership of that organization. And finally, connected to the Hurricane Helene aftermath, I would just make all citizens aware of the flood threats we have being right on the James River here in Goochland County. And it will take several days for waters to subside as the rains give way, and hopefully to sunny skies in the next day or two. So those are the chair's comments for this month. I will pass it on to Mr. Vic Carpenter for his comments.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, busy month ahead of us coming up. Some dates I wish to remind both the board and our citizens of. First, on this coming Saturday, October the 5th, from 11 to 2, Company 5, our volunteer fire organization, is going to be holding an open house for the newly renovated Company 5 station. Ribbon cutting will be at noon. Also, soon after that, the annual Fire Rescue Emergency Services Show is the next Saturday at Goochland High School, October 12th, from 5 to 9, so it's an afternoon-evening event with fireworks. Followed by that, the Goochland County Parks and Recreation is hosting its annual Fall Festival on Saturday, October 26th, from 11 to 2 at the Goochland Sports Complex. That's right behind here, this complex, the old high school football stadium. So bring your family out for that. There'll be costume contests, live music, vendors. It's just like from a Hallmark movie, I'm telling you. Also want to give, as well, as the chairman has indicated, Election Day is coming up. County offices will be closed on Tuesday, November the 5th for Election Day. So the next Board of Supervisors meetings will be Wednesday on November 6th, not Tuesday. So next month's meeting will be on Wednesday. And then finally, if you have small children, October 31st, we will be hosting a trick-or-treat trail here at this building from 3:30 to 4:30. So come in costume, we'll be in costume, having candy and fun. It's always fun to see the kids come out for all that. Also, Mr. Chair, a few items that I wish to update the board and the citizens on. Some months back, I announced that we were pausing the Station 7 while we looked for other, to make sure the location we had selected was the right location, or if there are better locations. As we continue in that process, we've determined to go ahead and start with the construction of Station 8 in Sandy Hook. So Station 7, we will continue to look for the best alternative location, or if that location remains the best location. But in the meantime, we will begin the construction process for Station 8 in Sandy Hook. Also, you may have heard there have been several cases where a citizen has come with some concerns for hunting at the Royal Virginia community. Just an update, staff has held several meetings with concerned citizens. We've communicated with property owners as well as the hunters that are authorized. We've met with the hunters to learn more information, communicating with Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources about the resources available, working with community development to understand the intentions of the property owner adjacent to the estates at Royal Virginia. It will continue following up with the authorized hunters regarding the initial conversations, as well as scheduling and sharing dates with those citizens and the hunters to try to put them together. And then finally, in line with what the chairman was also mentioning about the upcoming, or about the disasters and the way to respond, if you're looking for a way to help in these early days following a disaster, cash donations to reputable organizations are the best way for those impacted to get their specific needs met. So the United Way of Southwest Virginia is coordinating local donations. Cash donations can be made through their website, which is shared by Goochland County Department of Fire Rescue and Emergency Services. Other organizations that are reputable can be found at www.virginiavoad.org. And we'll make that available on the county's website as well to encourage your ability to support. And then, as the chairman said, we did send 5 fire rescue members on Monday morning early to Washington County, Damascus, and much of Southwest Virginia to provide support. So county, 1 volunteer and 4 of our career veteran employees are there right now showing the support that Goochland County has for our distressed citizens in Western Virginia. Mr. Chairman, that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. I will now move on to request to postpone agenda items and deletions, additions, or changes in the order of presentation. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda for tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will now hear some comments from Ms. Renee Townsend from our CASA program, followed by citizen comments.
Thank you. As Mr. Botters mentioned, my name is Renee Townsend, and I am the director for Goochland Powhatan CASA. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. So I'm keeping to the script today, because I know I have five minutes. So let me read from my script. Thank you for being a loyal supporter of Goochland Powhatan CASA, and this speech is directed to you all, the Board of Supervisors. The work that we do for the best interest of abused and neglected children within the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court. For fiscal year 25, we are celebrating our 20th year anniversary of our opening. Since our program opened in 2005, we have served more than 500 children, an accomplishment that wouldn't have been possible without your all's generosity. Goochland Powhatan CASA has been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to annually request and receive an $8,000 contribution from Goochland County and the Board of Supervisors. In addition, we received the in-kind contribution from you for the office space and services, for which I am very grateful for, as we rely on community members and volunteers to keep our program running. We are a nonprofit organization. And as you know, we are excited to now be offering our services in Powhatan County, even though this expansion has extended our needs. Our traditional funding source, consisting of federal, state, and then your all's local government grant, provide just over 60% of the funds we need to operate. So we are in the process of petitioning Powhatan's local government to match Goochland County's financial contribution. For fiscal year 25, our cash operating budget is roughly $140,000, an amount that covers the expenses of the nuts and the bolts functions needed to run the organization. These involve maintaining our office and technology, sustaining community outreach, and reimbursing CASA volunteers who use their personal vehicles to travel, to conduct interviews, and attend court appearances. This also includes salaries for two, one full-time person, which is myself, and then we recently were able to hire a part-time employee who actually is sitting here in the audience, is Deirdre Vaughn, who I recognize right here. We are an excellent team, and I just have loved sharing the office with her so far. She has a little niche in the corner office. I'm excited to announce that we are hosting our first in 6 years fundraising event called the CASA Community Challenge. It's scheduled for April the 26th, 2025, and our hope is to raise the amount needed to close the gap with this shortfall and to remain a strong, self-sustaining program. So hope to share some more details about that fundraising event in the future. So again, thank you for your financial support. Under the guidance of Goochland Powhatan CASA's board, the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court, and DCJS, we will utilize the contributions provided by you all, the County of Goochland, with resourcefulness and good stewardship. So thank you all very much again.
Thank you, Ms. Townsend, and Mrs. Vaughn for all you do to help us with CASA. We will now move on to citizen comments. Each speaker must provide his or her name and address. Citizens are reminded that comments should be about items not covered by the public hearings being held later tonight. Comments should be respectful and no more than 3 minutes in length. Should multiple citizens wish to have a common speaker, they may cede their time in 2-minute increments up to a total allotted time of 10 minutes. Per board rules of procedures, Section 3.2, a reasonable period of time intended to not be more than an hour is allocated for citizens' comment period. I'll now open the floor.
Good afternoon, Chairman Voters, members of the board, and county staff. Let me start off by introducing Sky Brickhouse. He is our new agricultural extension agent for Virginia Cooperative Extension. So Sky, I'm going to let you just introduce yourself there.
Hi, how are you? I'm Sky Brickhouse. I'm from Chesterfield County, Virginia. I went to Virginia State University for my undergrad, studying agriculture and environmental science concentration, then parlayed to my master's program where I studied natural resource and environment. So now being here, working in the extension office out in Goochland, I'm looking to bring programs that is in the realm of environmental protection, environmental awareness and mitigation, also assisting with the prominent needs here in Goochland County. So thank you for having me, and lovely to meet you all. Thank you.
I'll continue on if I may. You all mentioned the flooding a few minutes ago, and between this year's drought and flooding, it's had a major negative impact on our agricultural community. Depending upon where the river crests at, later today, tonight, we're expecting that to have over $1 million worth of damage to the agricultural community, from crop damage to destruction of property, including soil erosion. This past month, through the Virginia Agricultural Cost Share Program, we approved 20 contracts for $383,000. We've got $2.1 million allocated this year to us, so we hope future allocations come in, future requests for funding comes in. We'll be hosting the Goochland Leadership Enterprise at our office later this month. This month we did a education program for third graders at Randolph Elementary School on watersheds, understanding those. Then we've got the biggest thing going on coming up shortly is the well water testing program that's available through Virginia Cooperative Extension. That's a program open to all citizens in the community. It's strongly encouraged because that tests for water quality that affects people's health. So if you're interested in that, citizens should contact the Virginia Cooperative Extension Office. That will be, sample kits will be given out October 15th. They'll be collected the morning of the 16th. So contact the Extension Office. Related to our strategic planning process, we're still working on that. We're hoping to have a public stakeholder meeting later in November. Of course, we'll be advertising that through multiple venues, including the Goochland County website. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Other citizens, ma'am?
Hi, thanks for letting me speak to y'all. I'm Kathy Murray. I'm with Bird Sellers.
Please speak in the
Okay,
microphone.
I've not done this before. I'm Kathy Murray. I'm with Bird Sellers Vineyard and Winery, and I'm here today to talk about the signage, the TODS, and just to say that we did that on our own, and it has really helped our business. We've been in business, and we've been in Goochland for 20 years, and just in the last few months since we got our sign, we've seen 2/3 of an increase in new people that never realized we were even existed, that just bypass us on 64 and go to Charlottesville. So I was just speaking that maybe there could be some reimbursement on the signs. It seems like it's really a good thing for us, hopefully for you all, with bringing tourism in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any additional citizen comments? Okay. Seeing none, I will now close the floor. Members of the board, you have in front of you the minutes from the special meeting of August 24th, the transportation work session of September 3rd, and the regular meeting of September 3rd. Do I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? No? Okay. I will now move on to reports. First, we'll have Mr. Marshall Wynn to present the VDOT report to the board. All other reports are included in your Board of Supervisors packet. Mr. Wynn? Okay, we'll have one other after Mr. Wynn.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Carpenter, Marshall Wynn with VDOT. This past month, we had 229 work orders completed, 242. Had 12 call-outs after hours, and all of those were high water, trees down. Go figure. So, been doing normal maintenance activities, asphalt and pothole repair, ditching, pipe cleaning and replacement, tree and brush cleanup. Mowing, we completed a third cycle of primary mow earlier in September. Working on our secondary mow, we completed about 50% of that across the county. We haven't been able to mow grass for the past week and a half, so due to the rain. The other thing I did want to bring up, we're talking about Southwest Virginia. We do have crews out there. I have one crew from my residency, a crew of 11. They're working on debris removal. They left Sunday morning, and they've been there. They'll be there through next week. Mostly trees and hauling debris and that sort of thing. So they're working pretty much daylight till dark. That's just one crew from my area. There's another crew from Chesterfield, from the Richmond district. There's crews from Hampton Roads, Fredericksburg, and Hampton Roads that were deployed out there. And that's in the Abington residency, which is Washington County and Smythe County. So other than that, I really don't have anything else. I'll let y'all have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Any questions from the board? Mr. Spino?
Just more of a thank you. I got your message about Rock Castle being taken care of, so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say thank you also. It's a thank you day for the diesel abatement that you took care of there on 621.
Yeah.
I suppose it wouldn't be proper to ask if you could do that along all of Manikin Road because it really looks nice.
Okay. Yeah, one thing I forgot to say. Elk Island Bridge is closed due to water and debris on the bridge. So as soon as that water goes down, our bridge inspection team will go out and inspect that to get it back open. That's probably one of the spots the gentleman was talking about with, $1 million worth of crop damage and that sort of thing. So other than that, I don't have anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. We'll now call up Mr. Cliff Heller for the introduction of new county staff.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me. We are adding 7 new full-time employees. I want to start with fire rescue. Our new deputy chief, Tony Gordon, and we're finally introducing him. He came in just after the last meeting, so thank you, Tony. And then we also have over in Circuit Court, we have Debbie Taylor. She started on August 15th. There's Debbie right there. The treasurer's office has 2 new deputy treasurer. One's Emily Page and Lindisa Merchant. Don't think they were able to come, though. And then finally, Commonwealth Attorney Office has brought in a new paralegal, Reagan Lukowski, who is here right now as well. And not listed names, but we do have 2 new communications officers for the Sheriff's Department. They are in training right now. And lastly, we have hired at least 50 election workers, and they are still coming in. So it's going to be close to 100 when we're all said and done. So that is all of our new hires. So thank you and welcome to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Heller.
Welcome one and all.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Cliff will do the official county introduction next month because those were September hires. But we are very thrilled to announce that as of today, the new deputy county attorney has started, and Alexandra Spalding is here for the meeting today. We are very happy to have her here, and you all, as are the departments.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Okay, we will now move on to the consent agenda. I will ask Mr. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to be kept in line. Any board reports from outside boards?
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind.
Mr. Spoonhill?
CBTA has met since we last pulled up, and just want to let folks know, as I reported last month, myself and Mr. Moyer from New Kent County were asked to serve on the Finance Committee, and I was elected chair. Finance Committee is important for several reasons, but number one, because each jurisdiction counts as one vote, so it kind of levels the playing field a little bit. Regarding CVTA, as you know, there's been a lot of conversations, right? So far, all the projects that we have undergone have been pay-go, meaning we don't, as the revenues come in, they go back out to the jurisdictions and to the regional projects. We have been deciding whether or not we want to do bonding. No decision has been made, but the exploration of that has gone forward. So we are, in the last meeting last Friday, we did take the vote that we were going to move forward in the process to get what I would call pre-approved to do bonding. It's the layman's way of explaining it, which is the only way that I can understand it. But so that's kind of exciting. Goochland is taking a leadership position. Mr. Carpenter and staff have put together a white paper that will help, that we've circulated with CVTA. It'll be coming to the rest of the board members to review, and then upon your approval, the plan is to share that with other localities, especially other smaller jurisdictions, to understand how bonding could potentially impact and share our stance on it. So we want to collectively understand the board's desire for that, but some pretty exciting stuff from that realm.
Thank you, Mr. Spino. Okay. Sounds good. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda. I will ask Mr. Carpenter to summarize the items under consent.
Mr. Chairman of the Board, tonight we have 7 items on the consent agenda. The first item, Fire Rescue Department recently received a new Pierce Freightliner fire tanker with another one on order with an expected November 24 delivery timeline. Our older tankers have served the department well for the last 22 years, but their life use is no longer one which we find value in, so we are decommissioning them based on their costs. These 2 vehicles therefore have been determined to be surplus. The request in front of you tonight is to donate those 2 vehicles to some of our sister counties, one of which is Cumberland and one of which is Charles City County. The second item is the purpose of this request is to allocate additional funds to the Eastern Goochland Pump Station Force Main project. Certain unexpected events and field conditions resulted in significantly increased project costs. Project costs will exceed the original budget appropriation by approximately $740,000. There are 2 current DPU projects which will be completed under budget, however. So this provides an opportunity to cover a portion of the shortfall for this project by transferring funds from these projects. Unfortunately, not all the increased costs will be covered by the transfer. So we will be requesting tonight a transfer of approximately $480,000 in order to fully fund this project. We're asking the board to amend the fiscal year 25 capital budget by appropriating an additional $480,000 to the Department of Public Utilities R&R Fund from the Department of Public Utilities Capital Improvement Fund. This appropriation will constitute a loan between those 2 funds that will be repaid to the CIP over a 10-year term or sooner. Additionally, the board is asked to transfer $250,000 in previously appropriated funds from the budget for the Huguenot Hills Water Project and $10,000 in previously appropriated funds from the Department of Public Utilities Plaza Drive Water Line Extension Project to the R&R Fund. The next item, in recent years, the Board of Supervisors has approved various classifications of general fund balance for inclusion in the county's annual audited financial statements. This is consistent with GASB Statement Number 54, as well as the Board's policies related to fund balance. The attached list recommended assigned uses of the general fund balance as of the close of the fiscal year. Some of the assigned uses are carryovers from previous years, and others are new recommendations. Staff asks that the attached list be approved by the board. The next item, Mr. Chairman of the Board, is under state law and pursuant to the County Subdivision Ordinance, Article 2, Section 2, the Board of Supervisors has the responsibility to appoint a plats officer vested with certain responsibilities pertaining to subdivisions. In an effort to ensure that a designated plats officer is readily available to review plats during normal office hours, staff recommends the appointment of Carrie Ragland, a full-time employee, as the county's plats officer, with Jamie Sherry, Raymond Cash, and Anita Barnes as deputy plats officers in the event of her absence. The next item, the school board is requesting the following budget supplements totaling $157,331 as described below. An increase in the amount of $69,184 to the school operating fund for safety and security needs to be funded through a State of Virginia VDOE School Safety and Security Grant. and an increase in the amount of $88,000 to the Federal Grants Fund for school safety and security needs, and a secondary mental health counselor to be funded through a federal school safety and security grant, $38,854, and Federal Department of Behavioral Health and Development Services grant of $49,293. No county funds are needed for this request. The next item, at the August 24th, 2024 Board of Supervisors EDA Joint Work Session, staff recommended several studies and programs to enhance economic development in the county. The recommendations and funding requests are detailed as: 1, complete due diligence to increase a prime economic development site from Tier 2 to Tier 4 and produce marketing materials for $155,000. Perform water and sewer feasibility study for Oilville, $250,000. Infrastructure and studies for other prime economic development areas such as Courthouse Sewer, Bennington Road Water and Sewer, Plaza Drive Water and Sewer for $95,000. A small business expansion incentive for $50,000, and a logo tourist-oriented directional sign grant program for $10,000. And the final item, Mr. Chairman of the Board, is the Board has found that the proliferation of advertisements in the right-of-way of highways in Goochland County has a negative effect on the appearance of highways and of the county. An agreement is before you that authorizes the Board to act as the Commissioner of Transportation's agent for the purpose of removing any signs or advertising located within VDOT maintained rights-of-way that are in violation of Virginia Code. It will also allow the county, as the Commissioner's agent, to collect penalties and costs from the person, firm, or corporation responsible for signs or advertising located within the VDOT maintained rights-of-ways that are in violation as provided by Virginia Code. Mr. Chairman, those are the 7 items in front of you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Mr. Lau?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would request that we remove and separate consideration of only 2 items in the economic development request, item 6, which is the small business expansion incentive for $50,000 and the logo Todd's signed grant program for $10,000.
Thank you, Mr. Lau.
So Mr. Lau, what we're saying is we want to pull out number 6 from this to discuss in case we want to amend it?
Well,
Those 2 items.
Oh, just the 2.
Just the
that's
2
those
items.
2 specific items, but if you want to pull all 6 out, that's, I'm
gonna
good,
extract
I'm good with the last 2.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lau. So we will now take up the consent agenda items 1 through 5 and number 7, plus item 6, other than those 2 specifically mentioned by Mr. Lyle just now. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay, any discussion? We're going to go back to those, yes. Any discussion? Okay. Since we have a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so those items are approved. Now we'll move on to separate consideration of the small business expansion incentive.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to speak to this, and I believe protocol, I'll make the motion and then speak to the motion. And I would move that the board not approve the small business expansion incentive program in the amount of $50,000. And I guess we'll take them one at a time, or do you want me to do?
Yes, we'll do one at a time.
Okay, so there's my motion.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Ms. McGee, if it's seconded and that just opens for discussion, and then if it's denied, it comes back up before us, or if it's approved, it goes, obviously, but.
If it is denied, I have reason to, a second is for discussion. If it is,
Denied, it means it's approved.
if the motion for denial
Is denied.
we could do that, yes, sir. Trying to think, or we could make a second motion for
That's
approval.
where I was going.
Yes.
Okay,
That's a clearer way to go?
okay, so I will second the motion.
Thank you. So now that we have a motion and a second, do we have any discussion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. And I do support economic development. I've tried to faithfully attend the EDA meetings, and I think that the county's future really rests on commercial and economic development. I just think this is going about it in the wrong way. In the EDA workshop, there was a robust presentation on this. And as I understand it, it's intended to help businesses address any expenses associated with application and permitting. And it's also going to be rebated. So they're going to spend the money and then come back and go through another application process in order to get their money returned to them. I actually think that the better way would be to reduce those fees so they don't become a burden, and we streamline or make the process more efficient so it's not such a economic burden on them. So it's kind of like we're cutting them and then we're giving them a Band-Aid to put on the cut. I would prefer that we not approve this $50,000 and see how we can reduce the fees by $50,000 so that everybody gets to benefit from that. I would rather see all the businesses in the county benefit from a reduction in fees and application process than just those that, in a sense, we're picking and saying this is who we think should get the rebate or the subsidy in that way. So I like to go simpler. I don't know that I'm comfortable with us saying, well, we're going to put $50,000, but only towards selected businesses that go through a process, and we're going to do it after the fact. So there's my motion to not approve this $50,000.
Thank you, Mr. Lau, for your comments. And just for ease of discussion, Ms. Worley, if I could call you forward, that would be great. Mr. Spoonhour?
Yeah, so this is an interesting conversation in that I can understand where Mr. Lau is coming from, and I just wonder if there's a way to do both, because I really do believe that this board has made a commitment to economic development and especially to enhance commercial growth. That's been a big focus so that we could relieve some of the pressure of the residential growth. So I wonder if this is a good first step, because looking to change and the time it takes to do what Mr. Lyle said, which is reduce it, I think this new board is learning the speed at which government moves, or may not move, moves slower. It would be nice to be able to give some immediate relief, or at least a step to show that we are supportive of businesses. And I don't think we've done anything that doesn't say that, but I think that this would be great. I think the thing that I'm concerned about with this, and the second item, and I don't know, Ms. Worley, if you could speak to this, is, I think my experience is we do a lot of programs, we do things, but we don't necessarily see or understand the return or what the goals are. So, Ms. Worley, I don't know if you have any, can speak to these programs, if you have any specific goals, and how this board can be assured that, this is something we want to continue, or how it's going to be monitored.
Sure, yeah, thank you, Mr. Spoonhour. For the record, I'm Sarah Worley, the Economic Development Director here for Goochland County. Thank you, Mr. Lau, for your comments. Speaking directly to Mr. Spoonhour's comments, yes, we would see success for the small business expansion incentive if we were able to help 2 to 3 businesses in 1 year do that. And as part of the guardrails we've set up, the EDA would then come back and report to the board how they've assisted the businesses, how much money was put out, and what the ROI for that is. So there would be a record to show what the money is, where it's going to. In our discussions with businesses, they have told us that the permitting is what is really kind of taking the time for them, and unexpected kind of increase of those costs. We're seeing that the cost to do permitting is not just county permitting, we're also talking about state permitting and federal permitting, under which we have no control over, is 5 to 10% of their total construction cost at this point. And so this program is set up specifically to help offset that 5%. And it's only for small businesses, so we're looking at companies 250 or less in the county.
Thank you, Ms. Worley. Any other questions? Okay, so,
Yeah, just the 250, is that 250 employees?
250 employees,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
sir.
All right, thanks.
Well, I think, first of all, I think we had a very good work session between the Board of Supervisors and the Economic Development Authority. And I think we came away from that meeting with enthusiasm and overall encouraging economic development to a greater extent than we have in the past, and we're looking for the future. And I by no means think that Mr. Lyle is not supportive. And I think, you're probably even taking it a step further and reducing the fees and so forth. But I think this is one small step, and I'm in support of it. I'm also would like to pursue your thoughts as well, is reducing the fees.
I'm happy to talk more, but I don't know if that would be appropriate.
No, I mean, as we go towards the future and we plan on this.
Oh, no worries.
But I think we came away really encouraged that we were sort of jump-starting and adding to our emphasis on economic development, and so.
One thing that just came to mind, and I gotta be careful how I say this, is that I like the idea of the county coming alongside and helping with with this process. When we talk about the licensing or the different things that folks have to go through, I get calls weekly now about the process it takes, whether it's to build a building, whether it's commercial or residential, and the things. So having almost a vested stake in success is attractive to me. So I would see that that would be an important piece of this, that we could maybe glean some even more information to help our other processes to make sure that we are as business friendly as we could possibly be. But then also, if we were to figure out a way to make this happen, that there is I don't want to say a mandate, but kicking off the plan to look at reducing the fees long term. I think if we did both of those things, I could be in support of this.
Thank you, Mr. Spanhauer. And I would echo what Mr. Winfrey is saying in that, and make a promise to Mr. Lyle that, as we move into the 2025-2026 budget season, this will certainly be front and center any way that we can help the business community in Goochland to lower fees, if not eliminate them, and streamline the process. But, at this time, just as I don't ask Chief Ferguson to let me work a hose or Sheriff Creasy to give me a gun, I'm going to trust Miss Worley and her team to, use the funds wisely and help our business community in the most efficient manner possible. So if others don't have any additional comments, we'll move to a vote on your motion and move from there.
Mr. Chair, I will just iterate again that economic development is cornerstone. I simply just don't believe this is the right process, that we're using government money to subsidize when I think a broader approach of cutting the regulations and gracious, yes, improve the process would be the way to go. So I will just leave it with that.
I want some clarification on the vote. Now,
If
I'm
you
in
want
favor
to-
of this, so how should I vote? Okay. All right, excuse me.
So since we have a motion and a second, we'll bring Mr. Lyle's motion to deny to the floor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Nay? Okay, so by a 4-1 vote, the nays have it. So do we have another motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Sorry?
They're asking for another motion on the same item?
Oh, by not, okay.
Yes.
I defer to the parliamentarian.
Mr. Spoonhour?
I don't know what number that would be now. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve item number 6 for the Economic Development Program.
And that's specific to the small business expansion incentive in the amount of $50,000?
Yes.
You're right.
Exactly.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay. Having a motion and a second, do we have any further discussion? Does not seem so. Okay, we'll now ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay?
Okay. 4-1 vote, the motion passes. We will now move on to separate consideration of the logo tourist-oriented directional sign grant program. And do I have a motion?
Yes,
for
Mr.
that?
Chairman, I would, for similar reasons that I expressed, I would move that we deny this allocation. I wasn't expecting Bird Sellers to come and talk about how wonderful the program is, and that they did that on their own. And the request was, would they get some rebate? And as this is constituted, they would not. Anybody that's currently participating in this, whether it's the Manor at River Run, whether it's Dover Hall, whether it's Goochland Drive-In, Bird Cellars, they would not qualify for this. They made a conscious business decision in their best interest to participate in this. And so I'm uncomfortable with government coming in and saying, well, you haven't done this in your own best interest yet, but we're going to give you money so you do it. So I spent, since I guess it was 2009, my company started working with Virginia Tourism and VDOT on promoting tourism at the rest areas and welcome centers. And there is a lot of what we would call spontaneous tourism that takes place. People see things and they decide to participate, as again the owner of Bird Cellars noted. So I would submit that we would be better off promoting people to contact the Logos folks directly and make a conscious business decision. Do they want to see their traffic go up 2/3, as was represented here earlier tonight, without the government having to get involved? I don't know that it's government's job to put money into a program that a conscious, or I should say an astute business person is going to say, this works for me. So, Mr. Chairman, I do move that we deny this, this grant, this subsidy, and those are my reasons.
Okay, do we have a second for this motion? Okay, seeing none.
The motion fails for lack of a
Do we
second.
have another motion around the logo tourist-oriented directional sign grant program?
I move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second, for the same reasons I mentioned.
Any discussion on this specific, Mr. Spinner?
Yeah, Mr. Waters. I agree in principle with everything Mr. Lyle said. So especially, government role, and what I will also say is, being in advertising and working with a lot of new businesses don't know these programs exist. They get, I'm sure, our owner of Bird Cellars got into this not to be able to do marketing, or not to do marketing, but to grow grapes and have wine in a great facility. So I think that anything that we can do to help support that, and again, with the same expectations from our economic development department, that there are specific goals and metrics that next year we're going to scrutinize this program, and that and we will have to gauge success. And I don't personally see this as picking winners and losers. I see this again as, and Mr. Waters kind of touched on this, giving economic development the tools to say, go out, let's try it, let's see it sticks. One of my favorite sayings is iterate to great. So how do we get this there? And these are just different times. I know I've done a lot of things in my life where I've done something and then all of a sudden a rebate comes or something happens, and it's not to give anybody a boost in front of somebody, but it's to help people up to where they'd like to be. So.
Thank you, Mr. Spoonhour. Mr. Christie?
On the same principle of happenstance tourism at the rest areas and whatnot, if Bird doesn't benefit from this program directly, I would argue that they would benefit indirectly. The more traffic coming through the area to look for tourism, to look for businesses, they might drive past Bird Cellars or another small business, and business begets more business. So that's the main reason I would approve.
That's a very good point, Mr. Christie. Any additional discussion? Okay.
I'll just finalize by saying it's going to be first come, first serve. It's not for everybody. So once the money's gone, it's gone. And if you're number 11 of the 10 applicants, then you're up the creek. So it is. We're going to pick winners. We're going to pick the winners who come in first. There's a lot of ancillary, but I'm just philosophically opposed to government putting money into a program that private industry is doing and doing well.
Thank you, Mr. Law, for those comments. Any further discussion? No? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor, and seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, 4-1 vote, the motion passes. We will now move on to new business. We will hear a presentation from the Goochland Historical Society on the upcoming installation of a historical marker honoring the Marquis de Lafayette, followed by a request for consensus to approve the installation of the sign in the small parking lot across from the Goochland Historical Society.
Members of the board, I'm Manny Alvarez. I'm the chair of the Goochland, Virginia 250 Commission. And there you go. You heard it. Okay, so what we want to do today is we're really here for approval of the marker for Lafayette. But I want to give you an update on where we are on the project, since we, I spoke one day during public comment, but not regularly. So last week, we had a meeting with the Virginia 250 Commission, and they reminded us of the guiding principles for this celebration. And the first one is, it's a statewide commemoration. It's a multi-year series of events, and we already have several planned here in Goochland. The goal is to engage, educate, and inspire. We're calling it education through celebration here. Every Virginia can see their story and be involved in the Virginia 250 semi-quincentennial. Not as easy as a bicentennial, but, and Robin can say it in French too. I remember the bicentennial, that was easy. Semi-quincentennial is taking some practice. So this is our goal, and this deck you'll see that there's a mixture of our slides and the states. This is a state theme slide. So what we're going to do today is I want to give you a recap on the Run to the Revolution, and then we're going to talk about the 200th anniversary of General Lafayette's farewell tour, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the economic impact that we expect from the commemorations. So the race was a big success. I was hoping for more runners, but we had 75 registered runners and over 100 people attended the event. So we kind of call it a friend maker, and it was also a friend maker for Elk Hill Academy. They're kind of isolated, and they were very pleased with all the people that came and all the people that toured the old house that was built around the same time as Lafayette was here. While the race didn't really make any money, because of the race, we were able to seek out sponsors, and those sponsors did help us raise money. We currently have about a little under $10,000 in our bank account for the upcoming projects. So it was 16 sponsors altogether. Some were in-kind sponsors, some were cash sponsors. Another thing that happened out of this, and I was hoping to talk to the lady from Bird Cellars because I need to talk to her about this, but Elk Island Winery produced a wine called Revolution Red, and they used our logo from the race, and the bottle looks beautiful. I haven't tasted it yet, but I do have a bottle. And I think that's going to be a good seller for them. Midnight Brewery produced a 1727 Porter, and that came from a recipe that I found online that was originally supposedly handwritten by George Washington. They had to adapt it to today's standards and raw materials, but they did produce it. And Courthouse Creek is going to produce a cider, a Virginia cider. We haven't figured out yet, or they haven't figured out what they're going to call it yet, but we hope to have it available on November 2nd when we go there after the Lafayette celebration. And one thing that we're doing is we're continuing our partnership with Elk Hill Farm. They do a lot of really great work for kids that are in a rough situation or no home, no food, and mental health. So we're going to continue partnering with them and raising money at our events. So here's a picture. There's some folks here that were in the picture. I think I see Josh over there. And Rob, you can see Robin dressed as a one of Cornwallis's soldiers.
Other side.
Yeah, so anyway, we had a really great time. The course ended up being really, really great. And we kind of lucked out because since then it's been raining. So we had a good dry day for the race. And one of our board members, one of your peers, finished third overall in the race, Mr. Lyle.
Let's have a hand for that.
I plan to beat him next year.
Yeah, I came in last place today.
So now I'll turn it over to Robin to tell you a little bit about the Lafayette Farewell Tour.
Why don't you hit the next slide? Sorry. General Lafayette was the last surviving officer of the American Revolution in 1823, and President Monroe persuaded the Congress to invite him to come to the United States for a final farewell tour when he realized that more than half of the population at that time in the United States was born after Yorktown. They had no experience of the Revolution and what we had gone through. Now, when Lafayette came through on his tour, it lasted more than a year, but we're particularly interested in the period in which he came to Richmond, and then from Richmond was escorted through Henrico by the Henrico Militia Guard, and then he was turned over at Tuckahoe Creek to the Goochland Guard, and he had a celebration at Powell's Tavern, and then went from Powell's Tavern up to Goochland Courthouse, where he spent the night at Anderson's Tavern, and the next morning went from there to Fluvanna, was turned over to the next guard, and then he went up to Cumberland and then to Monticello. Now, the interesting thing to me about that is that he was feted or celebrated everywhere he went across the country. And he visited all 13 original colonies and the additional states. People lined the road and cheered when they saw him coming by. And there was a most extraordinary record made by Thomas Jefferson's grandson, Thomas Jefferson Randolph. When he came up the mountain on a circular road by carriage, there were almost 200 people in carriages and on horseback who came to the top. And you're, I'm sure, all familiar with the garden at Monticello. There were already 200 people who were assembled on a half circle, and the rest of them came up and they formed a full circle. And then Lafayette got out of his carriage, and I'd like to read now what Thomas Jefferson Randolph said of that occasion on November 4th, 1824. And I would remind you that Jefferson was 81, Lafayette was 66, and because of his wound at Bunker Hill, Lafayette always walked with a limp. Randolph wrote, Jefferson was feeble and tottering with age. Lafayette permanently lamed and in broken health. And they approached each other. Their uncertain gait quickened into a shuffling run, and exclaiming, "Ah, Jefferson! Ah, Lafayette!" They burst into tears as they fell into each other's arms. Among the 400 men witnessing the scene, there was not a dry eye. No sound except an occasional suppressed sob. This was one of the most extraordinary tributes to the Marquis de Lafayette when he came back to America, the man who had volunteered to fight at the age of 20 and been granted a commission as a major general, and later served at Yorktown, taking Redoubt No. 9. This is somebody that needs to be celebrated, and we are very pleased to be able to say we will have a marker given by the Lafayette Foundation to mark the occasion when Lafayette was here in Goochland.
So our ask tonight is for you to approve the location, installation, and maintenance of the marker. Once we receive that approval, we'll complete our plans for the celebration, which will start at Tuckahoe, and then we'll come to the courthouse area. The event at Tuckahoe will incur a charge, so we're going to invite folks, and those who can come. The event in the courthouse area will be free and open to all citizens.
If I might say one thing here, this is the proposed location directly opposite the History Center. If you look carefully, in the brick, there are two granite, not pillars, but I would say they are ledgers. And we believe those ledgers came from the side of the road before the road was widened, when we used to have granite curbs along the road. But those two granite ledgers are there almost as if they were expecting the Lafayette Monument to be there, because Lafayette was known as the hero of two worlds, having fought on both sides of the Atlantic. They are also a sign of what we call the equals sign, two parallel lines. And he was a champion of abolition and the equality of man. And that seems to be a place created for this marker.
So if you approve it, our event on November 2nd, we plan to start at Tuckahoe Plantation with a Lafayette impersonator. So we're going to receive him there as if he was Lafayette. We'll have speeches and toast, and we'll serve heavy hors d'oeuvres prepared by the Goochland High School culinary students. Then we'll travel to the courthouse area for the unveiling of the historical marker, and we'll finish the commemoration with lunch and refreshments at Courthouse Cidery. The students actually have already researched. Chef Kellenbach asked them to research food from the period, and they actually even came up with the fact that Lafayette loved Martha Washington's chicken and rice. But since we're doing finger food, they're going to create croquettes from chicken and rice. But they have pawpaw ice cream, or posset, whatever that means in French. They're having pawpaw possets, and the pawpaws are actually coming from the Tuckahoe plantation grounds, hopefully, if they're ripe by the time. So that's another, so the students will be serving, they'll be preparing the food, serving it at the event. So I'm not sure what needs to happen for the approval. Maybe I'll go through the economic impact. So first I'll show you what we heard last week from the VA Commission. As of the start of the commemorations, the state estimates $1.5 billion. It's been a $1.5 billion impact to Virginia, 22,000 jobs, $50 million in state and local revenues, 9 million people participating in the events and programs, and of course extensive media, interviews, articles, and so on. As you saw, they actually came and they were at our race, so they made that known to the world. In talking to Sarah, Goochland last year totaled $51.4 million from tourism, and that includes lodging, food, and beverage, and that was an increase of 7.2% from 22, and that equals 2.1 million tax revenue to Goochland County. We think our commemoration, our event is already, we have a lot of people interested in the November event, and we're going to have a lot more events next year. So I think it'll bring more visitors and hopefully more products that we can use through our partnerships. As I mentioned before, the current sponsors are Elk Island Winery, Midnight Brewery, Greenswell Growers, Courthouse Cidery, Elk Hill Farm, Wegmans, Historical Society, of course, and Goochland Parks and Recreation. We couldn't have done the race without Goochland Parks and Rec. They were amazing. So, and of course, Jessica and Sarah that helped us through all our communications and marketing. So, that said, do we have your approval for the marker? And I don't know how to go back.
Thank you for those comments. Let me add that for the November 2nd event, if any of you all have not had the chance to have the food prepared by our Goochland High School culinary program, it is a treat. So it's a wonderful program, but also exciting that they've done all that research and work for it, in addition to everyone else.
And we actually had to look up some of the recipes because I had no idea what they were.
So thank you for all those comments. Do I have a motion?
I just want to say, the reason I didn't participate in your race is I didn't want to be a burden on Goochland's Fire and Rescue.
Well, that's another group that was there, and they were on delay for us, so.
Having said that,
Next time, Mr. Winfrey, I'd be happy for you to join the foot brigade.
Thanks. I move that the board approve the location, installation, and maintenance of the Marquis de Lafayette historical marker as presented.
Do I have a second? Mr. Christie, thank you. Any additional discussion, board? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay,
So you'll be receiving an invitation, of course, to November 2nd.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Lynn and Mr. Alvarez. Okay, thank you all to all in attendance and who presented. We will now recess until our 6 p.m. Meeting. Oh, gosh, okay. I'll float away, thank you. Now I got one for the.
That was you and Vic saying.
Oh, well, there we go. Did you want one?
Oh, I'll take one.
There we go. There we go, good.
My wife reads my mind, I don't read anybody's. Are you getting the Mosaic emails from Free Cash or not? I mean, I'm up to 30. They don't want that connected road. They want. They want the 3 lots and no connected road, and it's like, kind of makes sense. Why put it-
We'll now reconvene the October 1st meeting of the Goochland County Board of Supervisors. We will open the floor for citizen comments. Each speaker must give his or her name and address. Citizens are reminded that comments should be about items not covered by the public hearings being held tonight. Comments should be respectful and no more than 3 minutes in length. Should multiple citizens wish to have a common speaker, they may cede their time in 2-minute increments up to a total allotted time of 10 minutes. Per Board's Rules of Procedures, Section 3.2, a reasonable period of time intended to not be more than an hour is allocated for citizens' comment period. I'll now open the floor. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening. Michelle Garman, 4003 Rural Virginia Lane. As promised, I am back to talk about the hunting issues, but I understand there was a discussion at your 4 o'clock session, and things seem to be moving ahead. So I will try not to be technically challenged, and I will try to look at that live stream this evening or tomorrow. But again, thank you all for working on this, and I look forward to moving forward and hopefully getting the issue resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Garman. Any more citizens? Okay. Seeing none, I will now close the floor. We will now move on to public hearings. The first is application 6105 from District 1, CU-2024-10, application by Bradley and Donna Reynolds requesting to amend conditional use permit CU-2016-8B for a public assembly place to add short-term rental unhosted, restaurant, winery on less than 50 acres with tasting room, and accessory public assembly uses on 23.07 acres at 5061 Broad Street Road. Ms. Jamie Sherry will present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. Our first public hearing this evening is an application by Donna and Brad Reynolds in District 1 to amend a conditional use permit to amend conditions for Bandage Ridge, which is a public place of assembly, establish a new winery on less than 50 acres, add a temporary use of a restaurant, and establish a new short-term rental unhosted. On the screen, the map on the right shows the general location of the property, which is in the northwestern portion of the county. It is located on Broad Street Road. As you can see on the aerial photo, the property is mostly vacant with a dwelling and some other buildings associated with the public place of assembly. The area is made up of farmland and large lot residential subdivisions. I've marked on the screen the location of Shelton Creek and Sheldon Ridge subdivisions. The property is zoned agricultural general, as are the properties to the south and the east. The properties to the north and the west are zoned rural residential. The rural residential is the Shelton Creek subdivision. On the right, is the 2035 Comprehensive Plan Map. This shows the designation for the subject property as rural enhancement area, as are all the properties in the area. So just a little bit of case history. Bandits Ridge was originally approved in 2016 for a public place of assembly. It was renewed in 2017 and again in 2022. Bandits Ridge is an event center that hosts weddings, private parties, and things along those events. There is a maximum of 150 guests per event and a limit of 1 event per day. The applicants are proposing a number of changes to the existing CUP. First of all, they are they're requesting to add a winery on less than 50 acres, and that goes along with a tasting room. The applicants have applied to the Virginia Department of ABC for a farm winery license. The applicants are in the process of meeting the requirements for that license, which involves planting fruit as well as obtaining the appropriate equipment for the winery. If approved, the applicants plan to operate a tasting room within the small venue barn, which is pictured on the screen. And number 2, they're hoping to add a restaurant for temporary use. While establishing the farm winery license, the applicants want to sell wine and limited food under an ABC license. It's called a restaurant license, which is why they have added that use for temporary purposes. And I'll explain the temporary as we go through the presentation. The applicants are also proposing to amend the condition for public place of assembly. Currently, as I had mentioned, they are allowed to have 1 event per day. They are actually requesting to increase that amount. Oh, thank you, sir. So they are proposing to increase the number of events from 1 per day to 2 per day. That's associated with the public place of assembly use. For outdoor music, currently for the public places of assembly, they are not allowed to have outdoor music or any kind of amplified sound, with the exception of during the ceremonies. But they are requesting to have outdoor music to be part of the tasting room. They would have hours that are limited to the time that they are open, which is 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., and that would be Thursday to Sunday. That would be from 11 to 7 p.m., 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. to Thursday through Sunday. Whew, sorry. Got thrown off. Let's back where we are. They are also proposing to add short-term rental unhosted to the CUP. They are requesting this approval to be in the existing dwelling on the property. The applicants currently live there now, but they are wanting in the future to have that as an option. If this is approved, they would have an occupancy of 10 guests for overnight stay. So the plan of development was approved for the property in 2016. The pictures on the left correspond to the locations of the structures on the plan of development. So you have the venue barns, both the, in the picture you have both the small venue as well as the large venue. Those are occupied those are indicated right here. The tasting room, which will be located in the small venue barn, is identified in blue. The dwelling, which is in the middle photo on the left, is where it says dwelling on the screen. And that is where the short-term rental unhosted would be located. Also on the plan of development is a pool, which is called the Tiki Bar area. That's indicated right here, and that it would be used for the public place of assembly, which is currently allowed, and actually also for the short-term rental. All the improvements on the POD, this plan of development says that proposed uses are those have all been completed, and the applicant has indicated they're not planning any structural exterior changes to any of the planned facilities on the property. So this aerial photo shows the closest dwellings to the CUP activities. To the east, you have a property that is approximately 200 feet away from the venue barn areas, as well as to the west, you have two properties that are approximately 1,300 feet from the venues, and that would be located in Shelton Creek subdivision. So in May, the Planning Commission, at their public hearing, recommended approval of this application with a 5-0 vote. Nobody spoke at the public hearing. At the July Board of Supervisors meeting, the applicant stated that they may need approval to operate a restaurant temporarily during the transition to become a farm winery being licensed by the ABC, state ABC. At the request of the applicant, the board granted the deferral to evaluate this option, and that's where we are this evening. In March, there was a community meeting. One citizen attended. There was discussion about the application, the owner's plans for the property. No concern was raised. It should be noted that when the application came to the community meeting phase of the process, restaurant was not part of the application. Staff has not required them to go back for another community meeting because based on the conditions that we are recommending, it would operate exactly as a tasting room, so there would not be an opportunity for like a McDonald's or like another restaurant to come in there. It would have to strictly abide by the conditions that would limit them to the uses of a farm winery. So there is one conditional use permit for all the uses that include the public place of assembly, short-term rental, unhosted, the winery under 50 acres, and a restaurant for temporary purposes. There are 35 conditions total, so I have summarized that which is part of the changes with this application. The full set of conditions are located on pages 212 to 215 in the agenda packet. Text has been updated for the standard conditions, so that's something that we do every time a renewal or an amendment comes through. There is an increase of events for the public place of assembly from 1 to 2 events per day. The conditions add a winery on less than 50 acres to include a tasting room. Hours of operation and limited outdoor music for the for the winery would be Thursday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. The maximum number of guests for both places, public place of assembly as well as tasting room, would be limited to a maximum of 150 guests. The rest of the conditions that are associated with the CUP have either been updated with the current standards or have not been changed. Okay, continuing with the summary, they are adding a restaurant as a temporary use. The conditions, as I had mentioned, do limit the activities to that of a winery and a tasting room. The use with the restaurant would expire 60 days upon approval of the farm winery or within 3 years. So in 3 years, if they had not received the appropriate ABC license, then they would no longer be allowed to operate the tasting room and associated winery. It does include the new short-term rental unhosted, and that would have all the standard conditions that we normally see with this use. And for the public place of assembly, the winery and tasting room, and the short-term rental unhosted, that would expire at the end of June 2032. That concludes my presentation. The applicant is in attendance, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Crispy?
For the expiration of the temporary restaurant use, is that something that, and this is more from my information, if we were at the last day of the expiration, is it something that the board could renew? Or is that a hard stop?
Well, without any action, it would be a hard stop. The applicant would be aware of this time running out. Typically, we let people know when things are about to expire, and they would have the opportunity to come back and ask.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Spinell?
Did you say that this CUP runs out in 2032?
Yes, and that date is associated with the renewal that they had back in 2022. The timing has stayed the same for that, because it was a 10-year renewal at that time. We figured, why add another? Yeah, yes. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
The tasting room, is that open to the public? People can come there, and so in addition to 2 events a day, it'll be open to the public as well?
Yes, they would be allowed, per the public place of assembly, to have 2 events per day, again, limited to, the conditions that are associated with that. But yes, they could also be operating the tasting room at the same time, with the understanding that the limit would be 150 guests on the property at any given time for those 2 uses.
Ms. Sherry, has there ever been outside or music either prior to their 9-month CUP or during their 9-month CUP or since the 5 and 10-year CUP? Have they had outdoor music?
No, so prior to this request, that would have been for the public place of assembly, and the public place of assembly does limit their outdoor music, amplified music, and any kind of speech or sound to that of the ceremonies. So they would not have to, allowed to have a band outdoors. All that would have to occur indoors.
So they never had any?
No,
outdoor
I
music?
believe they've never had that approval.
Somebody's looking at somebody.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Everybody's looking at me.
I have the conditions. Let's see, I have the conditions in front of me, and I can point to them on the slide as well. If you just bear with me 1
I just
minute.
have recall from the citizens' seats that there had been some discussion of people in the subdivision not liking some of the amplified music that they were hearing, and that may be just an imaginary recall on my part. But that's fine, but it's not.
I mean, I'd be happy to read it. So it says for outdoor sounds, which is condition 17, and I can go to that real quickly, for the public place of assembly. Let's see. One more. So outdoor sound, subwoofers are prohibited. All amplified sound shall be, it says shall be located indoors, but including speech, music, or other noise is prohibited outdoors except for as follows. Wedding processions and ceremonies to have amplified music and speech outdoors only, but during the processions only, but for the processionals of the ceremony. All outdoor amplified devices shall be oriented towards Broad Street Road, specifically directed away from the neighborhoods and to the south and to the west. So that would be like when they are during the ceremonies, they couldn't face them that way. So as far as I'm concerned, reading this, they would not be allowed to have that. I don't know, maybe there was something inside that bled over, I'm not positive.
Thank you, Ms. Sherry. Does the applicant wish to say anything?
Would you like me to pull up your presentation?
I don't think so unless
Okay,
they want
great.
to. Brad and Donna Reynolds, 5061 Broad Street Road, Louisa, Virginia. Mr. Lyle, to answer your question, the first year we opened, we had a tent outside, and we did have some challenges with the community for noise. But then we built the big barn, and since then, all the music has been inside. And so I
Okay,
think.
so I'm not crazy. Well, I may be crazy, but not on that issue.
Yes. So as far as I know, everything's been fine since then, but that was from the first year we opened the facility. But I guess my only couple comments is we appreciate the board's giving us the extension to figure all this out from July. And we also appreciate the staff's work on helping us come to a resolution to hopefully make sense for everybody. But I'll be happy to answer any questions.
If we approve this motion, does this put you guys where you need to be for the winery?
Yes, we are, I mean, the farm winery permit is that's our big goal. We are well on the way there. The hope is by the end of this week, the trees are on order and shipping in. We've already worked with a landscaper to help us plant them by the end of October. So everything's falling into place, and we believe we can make it happen.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Unless you have anything else?
No,
Good
sir.
luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I will just say, as a big proponent of economic development in the county, I am curious whether they will be participating in the directional signage program along the highway.
I'm not exactly sure what that is, but yes, we will do
We will make sure Ms. Worley gets in touch with you. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. I will now open the floor for public comments. Seeing no comments, I will now close the floor. Members of the board, do I have a motion? Mr. Christie?
Yes. I move that the board grant conditional use permit CU 2024-00010, subject to imposed conditions as presented.
Second.
Having a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Carpenter, would you take the roll?
Mr. Christie?
Yes.
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Mr. Lyle?
Aye.
Mr. Winfrey?
Yes.
Ms. Flawes?
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Reynolds. We'll now move on to application 6184 from District 1. CU-2024-12, application by Pleasant Grove Farm LLC requesting a conditional use permit for short-term rental unhosted on 103.92 acres at 4615 Old Fredericksburg Road. Ms. Jamie Sherry will present.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. As you stated, our next public hearing this evening is an application by Pleasant Grove Farm LLC, and this is in District 1. The request is for a conditional use permit for a short-term rental unhosted on Old Fredericksburg Road. The map on the right shows the general location of the property, which is in the northwestern portion of the county on Old Fredericksburg Road. The aerial photo on the right shows the property as mostly vacant. The surrounding area includes farmlands and large lot residential subdivisions. To the north of Fredericksburg Road, on the other side of it, farther to the west, you can see the location of Midpoint Industrial Park, as well as some other subdivisions in the area to the north and all the way to the very south, which is Haydensville Farms. To the west, directly to the west, is HG Meats. This is a small meat processing facility that the board approved last year. That's the location of that. The property on the left shows the property zoned as agricultural general. The adjacent property, as are the adjacent properties. The purple in the top indicates the location of the industrial park. On the right is the comprehensive plan designation, which is a rural enhancement area for the subject property and all the adjacent properties. Again, the industrial park has different designations between industrial, then just to the south of that there is a piece of property that is designated as commercial. So the applicant's representatives, the McConnells, actually live on the property, and they are currently farming the property. They plan to hold agritourism activities associated with their farming activity, and there are 2 dwellings and several farm structures on the property. As you can see on the aerial photo, sorry, I'm having a hard time with this. The short-term rental will be operated in the main house. They have a rural plan of development already approved for their agritourism activities, where they've identified where their parking location is, as well as some of the farm structures that are going to be associated with those activities. There's also a guest house that is located in the back portion of the property. So the applicants are requesting a CUP for a short-term rental unhosted. As I mentioned, that will be located in the main house, which is pictured on the screen. The occupancy for overnight guests will be limited to 10. The applicant is requesting a 10-year expiration date. Standard is 5 years for an initial approval for this type of application. So a lot of words on there, but this is just a quick a history of how we got to where we are. So the application was initially submitted for a public place of assembly as well as a short-term rental. That was when the formal application came in. At the June Planning Commission meeting, the applicant requested a deferral to July. They had some questions in reference to some of the conditions that were associated with both of those uses. At the July 18th meeting, applicant again requested a deferral to the August meeting. Again, very similar conversation, but I think there was probably some discussion that they were having internally about whether or not the public place of assembly was the direction that they wanted to go. And sure enough, between the July meeting and when it came to the Planning Commission in August, they did remove that use for the property. So it came forward to the, in August, to the Planning Commission as a short-term rental unhosted only. They did request a 10-year renewal at that meeting as well. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of that request with the 10-year, with a 5-0 vote. Nobody spoke at the public hearing. So the comprehensive plan, as it's currently conditioned, it is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. There was a community meeting held back in April. There were 12 attendees. At the time of the meeting, the applicants were considering a wedding venue, a day camp, and a shooting range, as well as the short-term rental. None of the questions at the meeting or concerns at the meeting were associated with the short-term rental. And even with all those other uses, generally, the attendees were supportive. So the conditions that are recommended before you, I'm going to go through those kind of quickly, but I'll just do an overview. Condition 1 allows for the use of the short-term rental unhosted. Condition 2 restricts parking on Old Fredericksburg Road, and there's also some language about posting the no parking signs on the road. Condition 3 limits the overnight guest to 10. Condition 4 requires the installation and maintenance of at least one carbon monoxide detector and one smoke detector. Number 5 requires emergency access be maintained to the dwelling. Number 6 limits the amplified music to 10 p.m. Number 7 requires no trespassing signs or colored tags to be posted along the property line. And number 8 requires the dwelling to maintain a residential appearance. Condition 9 prohibits the use of firearms, which includes hunting. Number 10 prohibits the use of fireworks. Number 11 requires that guests get written notice for the occupancy of 10, the amplified sound, firearms including no hunting, and the no trespassing. So they are aware of those rules in writing. Number 12 reflects the recommendation from the Planning Commission, which is a 10-year approval, which would go to 2034. Staff does have a comment. It is standard for this type of application on the first approval for there to be a 5-year renewal, not a 10. This would give the opportunity for any kind of input that would be out there, time for them to contact the county if there was any concern. And if there weren't any concern, it sounds like they would be able to be renewed. And lastly, our standard condition for transfer or lease, requiring notice to the county and the new leasee or property owner. If the property is sold, the county needs to be told, and if the property is sold or leased, the conditions need to be submitted to the new owner or leasee. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. The applicants are in attendance as well.
Any questions from the board of Ms. Sherry? Mr. Lau?
Thank you, Ms. Sherry. I remember the community meeting. They had some great cookies. The staff has observed that in the past 5-year CUPs is sort of the way we have operated. And then your comments was that was because if any concerns came up during those first 5 years, they could be addressed. But if they came up in year 6 or year 7, they'd be addressed, wouldn't they?
Certainly. I mean,
So the 10 years will keep them from having another community meeting, filing another $750 permit fee, and going through this process again. And at the same time, within that 10 years, we would be able to revoke that CUP if they're not in compliance. Is my logic good there?
That is correct, but if I could expand a little bit more
Sure, please,
on
yes.
staff's reasoning behind that. In 5 years, a lot of things can happen. Neighbors can change. They may not be aware that, that there even is a conditional use permit going on. There could be I'm not saying that this is how the councils will operate, but if there are things that are of concern, when the public notice goes out at the 5 years, they may know that there is an opportunity and a process to make their voices heard.
Okay, so, and I understand and I appreciate that, but still, whether or not the notice goes out, if there are concerns, loud noise, excessive crowds, parking along the road, all of those can be shared with the county, and they would either come into compliance with the CUP or lose it.
That's correct.
Okay, so, and if it was a 7-year CUP, if it happened during the first 7 years, I mean, the rules of the CUP aren't going to change whether it's a 5 or 10-year. They're going to stay the same, is that correct?
If you all approve as presented this evening, those would be in place for 10 years unless they came back for
Okay.
an amendment.
Just lightening the hand of government if possible. Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Winfrey?
So the Planning Commission, 5-0 for the 10-year extension. Is
Yes,
that
sir,
correct?
that is correct.
I'm looking at this, it seems relatively ordinary conditions. There are 17 conditions, however, they're all reasonable and understandable. But we put the 5-year in there for a reason, and, it would take some major things to happen to do a revocation of the CUP, I would think. But if there were complaints during the first 5 years or so forth, it would give the opportunity to adjust the conditions a little bit if reasonable and so forth and so on. I don't see where it's a huge burden to renew one. That's fine.
Thank you, Ms. Sherry.
Of course.
Does the applicant wish to make any comments?
Good evening, I'm Mark McConnell. My wife Sherelle and I live at 4615 Old Fredericksburg Road in what I appreciate them calling the guest house. That's where we actually live. It's the 1870 house in the back of the property. The main house is a little older than that by 30 years. Appreciate, by the way, I was really impressed when I heard you have over 200 pages in your agenda packet. That's impressive. We're really excited to have this opportunity to do the unhosted. And I totally get the 5-year idea with unhosted rental in particular, because if somebody is living in Cincinnati, they could easily lose control of a property. We live on the property, and we actually know our neighbors and go walking with them every 3 times a week on the trails and roads around the farm. So I think that we're a little different here, and it does help unclog the system a little bit. If something were to happen and we were in violation, we just put in a 40-car parking lot on our farm road. The fire marshal came out there, drove his trucks around, to make sure that the roads didn't pump. I think that we're well in compliance, and we live there, which is a little different than normal. I think with an unhosted, because with the unhosted, the owner could live anywhere and rapidly lose control of their property. But we also hope that the farm will become a bit of a community hub. So we anticipate sometime in the very near future being back here. My wife, who's a education person, is anticipating having field trips of kids out to the farm and things like that. And someday we may need to amend the conditional use permit, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I think that our interaction with the county is not going to be limited to once every 10 years. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Christie?
Sorry. So your reasoning for applying for this conditional use permit is to basically preserve the property, correct? Isn't that what you're?
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to, we've had our share of real estate people out there to divide up the property, and we really want to keep it together. And we want the main house, which is really too big for the two of us, to be available for family reunions and, up to 10 people can stay there. There are 5-bedroom suites, each with its own sitting room and private bathroom. You should come out. I mean, it's a beautiful place. And, yeah, it's so that we can keep the farm functioning. We have 65 acres in soybeans right now, which, as you know, probably wouldn't pay the taxes. So that's the idea.
And so with the 10 years renewal, that would lock that piece of property up for basically 10 years, or help you guys.
It would help us.
Prevent it
Exactly.
for-
We would know what we were doing in terms of a business plan.
Right.
We would know, and hopefully as we build, we've already had, we stay in the house and then we have Airbnb, people just renting a room. And we've already had repeat guests. We've only, been doing this for a few months. And we hope that people will continue to return and come back to Goochland and, eat in Mineral at the restaurants and stuff like that. Yeah, we want, what we're after is consistency.
That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Well, sorry,
No.
just thank you for bringing this up.
Okay.
I do like, in principle, this project. Can you tell me how long you've owned the land?
We don't own it.
Okay.
So the owners are the Masseys. A very short story. I'm an architect. I renovated the house 12 years ago for Mr. and Mrs. Massey. And they moved away from the property about a year and a half ago. And I'm helping Mr. Massey with his new home. And he asked us if we were interested in taking care of the farm. So we worked out a leasehold agreement with him and his wife and they gave us complete and free reign to do what we want with the property, including sell it, if we can, return to them their particular investment. So we don't own it, but we plan on owning it in the future. It's a lease purchase option.
Okay. Thank you for that. What is does Airbnb requires a CUP, correct?
No, because Airbnb is typically, we have to be in the house. Airbnb doesn't require you to be in the house.
Mr. McConnell is correct. We have the unhosted short-term rental requires a conditional use permit. If it's hosted, meaning that they're staying in the house, they do not need a conditional use permit. They just need to register with the county.
You may not want to go anywhere, because my next question may.
Yes, sir.
So you said why are we asking for the unhosted if you stay there then?
Because we'd like to rent the entire house. And we live in the other house on the property.
So that requires that, great.
Right. Because we'd like to rent the whole house so people can have it for themselves.
Okay. And then, so you don't own it, you could sell it, and you want us to go against what we've been doing with the 5 years, right?
Yeah, we don't, of course, anybody can sell a piece of property that they have. We don't own it, but our lease option has a purchase clause. So we're planning on, if we can develop this business,
Right,
to purchase it.
Which my point is, you could buy it, sell it, and then the conditions still go through, and we've given a 10-year CUP to somebody else.
Oh, I was unaware. So it stays with the property.
Yeah, yes, it does.
Sure, I guess that's true of any,
It's actually on the screen.
that's true of any property.
This will be a question to our attorney as much as to you, but would you be open to a concept, if we can get it done, of 10 years that would revert back to 5 years should the leasehold agreement
Oh, sure.
go away in any way? I see your logic, it makes total sense. I do, there is a reason. Government sometimes seems to act with no reason, but we do have a reason for the 5 years initially. But given this situation, if the leasehold agreement is in place, the assumption is you all are on the property. But, we have to work with the unknown.
Sure, I mean, we wouldn't mind it at all.
The
I mean,
CUP extending. Now, is that
The
possible?
struggle, Chairman Botters, is that land use is blind to who owns it. So conditioning it, it would be as if we made it personal to them, like it's only as long as they own it, and that's.
Well, and what I will say, we're kind of bleeding into, discussion, but I will say while we're on the topic, we have been open to the 10s and the 15s for that second. Because that 5 years really does give everyone the opportunity to
see how it goes.
Make sure, I hate for us to set precedent that we're going as far as 10 years. So, should that be the way we go, I don't want you to see us as an adversary to what you're trying to do.
No,
We
of course
appreciate
not.
agritourism, but, given the uncertainties, we just have to operate in a way that we have in the past, if that is the way we end up deciding. So, any other questions of Mr. McConnell? Okay, thank you very much.
Board members, if I may,
Yes.
just before you hit a procedural motion, the conditions before you do have the 10 years in it. So if you choose to change it, that would be as amended. Usually, it's staff's recommendation that's in the conditions, and you only change it to the applicant. But I think because that's what passed the planning commission, it's before you with the 10, just to clarify for motion purposes. But
So I'll now open the floor for public comments. Yes, ma'am?
Sherelle McConnell, 4615 Old Fredericksburg Road. Number 13 right behind you, transfer or lease. If we sell the property owner shall notify in writing the community development department. It seems like there's a mechanism in place for the very thing you talked about. If this changes hands, somebody will know, and
If I might, and please go. The issue I see potentially is the Masseys could still own it, but you might not be there. If that's the situation, then we don't have the.
so the lease transfers. If there's any kind of transfer, not just ownership.
And Mr. Vodder's question to me earlier was not just do we want to know, but he would shorten the time frame if there was a transfer. This is just a notification. But he had asked, could we condition your time frame to be that there not be a transfer of the lease? And that was the situation. This is only notice that it transfers. They don't get to do anything differently because of it. They're just aware.
So if we put into the language, if we transfer this, then it reverts to a 5-year, is not a, they get, okay. All right, so does it matter, a 5-year, 10-year? We've just spent a lot of hours, and so we feel like we were doing our civic duty to relieve the government of some of its hours that goes into these things, which for us has been extensive. And then two, the business license, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I'm going to take this much risk for what surety in the future? Can I do this for 5 years? Can I do this for 10 years? I don't want to take this much risk if I only know I can do it for 5 years. And I think you guys think, oh, well, we'll just renew it. Well, I'm feeling vulnerable. But, it's a risk that I take to establish. And this Verbo is not a big thing, but we are discussing a CUP in the future with a lot of other things coming forward. And if I can't get a tenure on a simple Verbo, then I'm not going to get a tenure on a more elaborate plan. And so that's putting a lot of money at risk. I don't want to put that kind of money into something that I can only do for 5 years. And so that's my concern. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Any other public comments? Okay. Seeing no more, I will close the floor. Members of the board, do I have a motion? Mr. Christie? Mr. Spoonhour, would you like to? No, no. We're talking about.
All right, I got it, I've got it.
Mr. Christie?
Yep. I got it. Board, I move to approve as amended for 5 years. for a conditional use permit.
So your motion is to approve with an amendment to condition 12, where it would expire in 2029.
Yes.
Correct.
That's what you said.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. But I'll let the
Mr. Lau.
second, I'll let the seconder go. What? You did not second?
I just kind of, pardon us as we make the sausage now. And procedurally speaking, I just want to make sure that if folks, because it's amended, if folks are in favor of the 10 and we deny the 5, the whole thing gets denied, correct?
Yes.
So if at some point somebody may want to pull the motion, depending on how the conversation goes, is that
Yes, or make a friendly amendment.
make a friendly amendment to go to revert? Okay. I just want to make sure that we don't do something unintentional.
Yeah, we're still in.
Any additional discussion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've heard the comments that, well, this is precedent, this is how we've always done it, we can't really go against what we've always done, and I think that one of the wonderful things about a change in board and dynamics of a growing county is that, yeah, we can improvise, adapt, and overcome as situations proceed. I'm very sensitive to the fact of a 10-year business plan. I mean, I've had businesses, and I'm not somebody who's so smart. I lost money every year, my first years of the companies I started. We lost money. I wasn't that good. But we made money usually by year 3, and as we got to year 5 or so, it started to take off. And so I appreciate the longer view on the business plan. And I'm very comfortable with us changing not only on CUPs to 10-year, but also on the auxiliary dwelling units that are also 5-year. I've never been through a CUP process, but I have certainly heard staff comment about the time it takes. We, 3 years ago, had somebody say, well, we need to do away with community meetings because they were drained on staff time. They take up time. And that did not happen because that was not a good idea, in my opinion. So I'm comfortable with the 10-year. I also very much appreciate my colleague from the 1st District. It's his motion on the floor. I would like to see this happen one way or the other, but I am extremely comfortable that 10 years would be a good decision. It would be a balanced decision. And as I tried, and I think Ms. Sherry humored me nicely, that we can pull a CUP at any time it is not in compliance, whether it's year 2, year 7, or year 3. But I'm not aware of too many CUPs we pulled because by and large, the applicants that have come have played by the rules. So I would welcome it to be a 10-year, but I'm going to vote for it one way or the other to make sure it doesn't die in the, I don't know. I want to make sure that this gets done, but I would be very comfortable with 10 years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The one comment I will make is just in support of the standard procedure of 5 years to start. My experience as a supervisor, and Mr. Spoonhour could certainly provide his, is we have been so amenable to the longer terms after that first pass. And it's, I want to see every business succeed, but I do want to see a track record. And so that's, I think that is sound operating practices from our side. I love the idea of limiting government, but I also like governments to govern. So, definitely don't want it to be seen as any sort of pushback on our board's general support of our business community. But we do want to see that first 5 years.
I understand the business decision regarding risk, but I think as long, and we would not arbitrarily not renew a conditional use permit. There would be reasons for it, and generally it would be because you're not in compliance or something. So you have that. You will you're in control of whether you're going to be in compliance or not. So I think it would give you some comfort level knowing that you're not going to be breaking the rules and violating these 17. So I think the risk is minimal. I mean, it's not going to be a change of mind on our part to not allow these things such as yours to continue in this county. I mean, it would be because of some violation, I would think. So
Yes. And Mr. Christie?
While I made the motion for 5 years, I want everyone to know that I'm actually in favor of the 10 years. But I'd rather see this thing get passed instead of just killed, you know. So I wanted everyone to know that's why I decided with the 5 years. I want to see this thing go through. I'm confident that if you guys are good stewards, then it'll definitely be granted again, so.
And I would thank you, Mr. Christie, and I think Mr. Spoonhour's comments were dead on. This is part of the sausage making. Doing amendments over amendments can get quite confusing and cumbersome, so we did not strong-arm him. We were working with him to make it as efficient as possible. So thank you all very much for understanding.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just to make the sausage a little spicier, I'd be happy to offer a friendly amendment to revert to 10. I'm looking at a grinning First District Supervisor down there.
I think we can gauge across the dais.
I understand.
Thank you for your
I appreciate your good humor, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Having a motion and a second, Mr. Carpenter. Oh, any more discussion?
Yes, I've been waiting.
I'm sorry, Mr.
I've been waiting. So I'm a little confused because less than 3 hours ago, we talked about picking winners and losers. We spent a lot of time talking about that, and I'm sure everyone that came through for an unhosted in the last 5 years that I've been doing this would have liked a 10-year CUP. And we also talked about making sure we were doing it the right way, so going to the court. You brought up the community meetings, which I think is very ironic because, to be honest, I was the one that pushed that because we kept having the CUP renewals for unhosted, having to go through that, and yet the public went crazy over that, and it got killed. So it was only for a very limited, it was literally for this case of a renewal that we tried to make it less cumbersome. But now that we're up here, I guess the primetime seats, it's different. So I think a $750 renewal, because, and I did want to ask staff, I don't know if this is Ms. McGee or Ms. Sherry, like we talk about withdrawing a CUP is like the stroke of a pen. I can't believe it's that at all.
The revocation of a CUP lies within your legal ability. I have been practicing land use law for the past 30 years, and I've never seen a board do it. It's not easy. You have to have good legal grounds. You have to initiate the revocation yourself, and then move it through the planning commission and through the board. So it is a legal right, but I would be incorrect to say it is easy, or that easy either process-wise or politically.
So, you know, I think, I do appreciate the business plan aspect of it. It does give me pause when somebody's saying that right out the gate, they're concerned that they're not going to be able to meet the conditions, that it wouldn't be renewed in 5 years. So I think for me, I want to see this project go through, and I want it to be extremely successful, and I want to have wine there, or whatever the event is. I looked at that house, I'm like, oh, I could have my family there. But, you know, we want to make sure that we are being, again, I understand land use is, there are no precedents, and I don't want to pick winners and losers.
Any other discussion? Mr. Lau?
And I'm enjoying the conversation, so I hope, again, this is different from some of the other meetings I've seen over the last 12 years. Just point of clarification in my memory, the whole community meeting thing was at the discretion of staff, and there was no absolute certification or definition as to whether it would only be for CUP renewals. It was like if staff thought there was no need for a community meeting, there wasn't. So that was my recall. Well, I'm hearing staff say no.
Yeah, let's focus on.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The winners and losers, I'd be comfortable if all CUPs were 10-year. I mean, because And so the winners or losers aspect is I would like to see a level playing field for all. And again, I have faith in our counselor. And if we needed to revoke a CUP, that we could do it. But I think also the fact that we have been very judicious, and there have been CUPs we've not approved because I'm speaking now collectively as a board, not me personally, saw that they didn't hold water. They weren't the right CUP to be approved. So at that juncture, again, I think the unanimity is that we'd like to see this happen. I've simply expressed an interest in seeing it eventually become a 10-year process because, yeah, 750 and time's the thing you can't ever get back. Money you can make more of if you're good at it, but nobody gets more time. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lau. I will stress after the discussion that's taken place, constituents, please reach out to your supervisors about issues such as this, fees, timing, things of this nature, because we do want these comments, and that's what helps steer policy to be more streamlined. The policy in place, I think, is fully justified. It is what we have used numerous times for other businesses coming through the first time. And so, this is all laws written are meant to be amended at the right times. And so please let us know, those in the business community, if there are things you want to see. I don't know that we'll go to zero fees, but we will do our best. So are there any other discussion items from the board? Okay.
Call for the question.
Seeing none, we have Mr. Carpenter. Can you take the roll call?
Mr. Christie?
Yes.
Ms. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Mr. Waters?
Yes.
Mr. Lau?
Not on. With an asterisk, aye.
Yes.
And Mr. Winfrey?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The final item on our agenda is application 6183, RZ-2024-8. This is in District 3. Application by Robert R. Harris and Karen S. McAndrew, requesting a proffer amendment to rezoning case RZ-2005-6, to reduce setbacks and buffer width from Maidens Road on 5.973 acres at 2267 Parkers Hill Drive. Ms. Sherry will be presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our last public hearing this evening is an application by Robert Harris and Karen McAndrews requesting to amend proffers approved with rezoning case RZ 2005-0006. The property is located in District 3. As you can see on the vicinity map, the property is located centrally within the county, specifically on Maidens Road and Parker Hill Drive. On the aerial photo, there are several residential subdivisions in the area. They're all identified in white. All right. The subject property, as I mentioned, is located at the intersection of Maidens Road and Parker's Hill Drive. The subject property is zoned rural residential. The designation for the area the property is zoned rural residential. Other areas surrounding it also have residential designation. The ones that are zoned agricultural general are limited, are all in the light green. All of those are residential properties, as well as the RP, which is rural preservation. The 2035 comprehensive plan identifies the property as a rural enhancement area, as are the properties east of Maidens Road. On the west side of Maidens Road, those properties are identified as single-family residential. So the Algernon Woods subdivision was approved back in 2005. It approved a 4-lot subdivision, which is shown on the screen. The subject property has the dotted blue lines. There are 4 residential lots that are lined up. It is located, as I mentioned, at the corner of Maidens and Parker Hill Drive. Why that is significant is that the property across the street from the subject property on Parkers Hill Drive. That is actually open space associated with Parkers Hill, the preserve at Parkers Hill, as are the properties located behind it. So just a little summary of the proffers that existed, that currently exist on the property. There are 13 proffers in total associated with that case. The applicant is requesting to amend 3 of those proffers to reduce the driveway setback, to reduce the building setback, and to reduce the vegetative buffer. The remaining proffers are not to be amended and remain in place as they were approved back in 2005. Just a little summary of what those other proffers are. The full set is located in the agenda packet on pages 260 and 261, but just for a quick summary, proffers that are not being amended include accessing the development on Parkers Hill Drive, a maximum number of 4 lots in the subdivision with no further subdivisions of those 4 lots, a minimum lot size of 5.9 acres. They were not permitted to have an entrance sign. There was a cash proffer associated and a minimum dwelling size of 3,000 square feet. So number 11 is a proffer that they are requesting to amend. They're requesting to reduce the driveway setback from 300 feet to 100 feet. And as you can see on the photograph, there are 2 lines that are showing the two different possibilities. 300 is the driveway setback, and as you can see from the aerial, the existing driveway goes right up to the setback. They are requesting the 150 feet setback, which is the second white dotted line, and as you can see, there is 150 feet between the 2. It should be noted that the request, if approved at the 150, does meet the spacing requirements for driveways. Number 12, they are requesting to reduce the building setback. So the 2 lines, white dotted lines that you see on the screen, the 350 building setback is located here, and as you can see, it goes right up to the property. The existing dwelling. So it was built right up into the proffered setback. They are requesting that the setback for both that could also be accessory dwellings or another dwelling for family, to 100 feet. So that's a 250 feet reduction in the setback line. And lastly, they are requesting to amend the vegetative buffer. Again, the same approach. The 250 line is the one that's closest to the house. That is the 250 required buffer with no clearing. They are proposing to go down to 100. As you can see, that is a 150-foot difference. It should be noted that the 100-foot proposed buffer, that is actually something that the board approved recently back in July when we did our access management amendment. Maidens Road, the type of road as an arterial road, would be required to have a 100-foot setback. So that is something that meets the ordinance requirements. There was a community meeting held back in May. There were 13 attendees. Discussions included the size of the buffer and the buffers on nearby properties, the preservation of the rural viewshed, protection of trees and wildlife, that changing the proffers might be changing the rules, plans for the property. There were questions as to what the applicant planned to do with the property if this were approved. Several attendees expressed some concerns, and at the same time, others were supportive of the request. The application is consistent with the rural enhancement area designation. As I mentioned, the 100-foot buffer ordinance requirements. This was done as kind of a result of what a policy that the board has had for many years, that in order to preserve that rural view shed, the 100-foot buffer was something that we actually codified back in December. So therefore, that's why we've come up with the designation being consistent. The Planning Commission at the August meeting, at their public hearing, they recommended approval of this application with a 5-0 vote, and nobody spoke at the public hearing. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is in attendance.
Any questions from the board, Ms. Sherry? Does the applicant wish to say anything?
Rob Harris and my wife Karen McAndrew, we're 2267 Parkers Hill Drive. Want to thank everyone on the board for allowing us to present this to you. Our main concern here was just excessive. When this was asked upon at the previous meeting, there is no other proffer that was in the county that we could find that this was in play. So the 350-foot setback, the 250-foot setback on the buffers wasn't in play anywhere else other than this particular property. The other thing is Algaron Woods, we are the only property that this affects. The other properties do not have this stipulation, it's just this particular lot. And again, we just want to play by the rules that everybody else is, and people have asked, what do you plan on doing with the property? I want to do is everything with my property that my neighbor is able to do. So anything that I would want to do, I would present to the county and for approval or non-approval or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of our point on that. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Any questions from you? Okay. Thank you
Yes.
very much. Okay. I will now open the floor for public comments. Seeing none, I will now close the floor. Members of the board, do I have a motion?
Oh, excuse me. I move that the board grant proffer amendment RZ 2024-0008, subject to the imposed conditions as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Carpenter, would you take the roll?
Mr. Winfrey?
Yes.
Ms. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Mr. Christie?
Yes.
Mr. Lyle? Aye. Mr. Valdez?
Yes. Thank you all very much. We will now adjourn the Board of Supervisors as follows. First, Wednesday, October 23rd, the board will convene at 9 a.m. for a meeting with the legislative delegation at Central High School. Second, the board is invited to attend the annual employee recognition luncheon on Thursday, October 24th at noon. And third, Wednesday, November 6th, 2024, we have our afternoon regular business meeting, time TBD. And at 6 p.m., we will have public hearings and our evening meeting, all open to the public. Thank you very much.